Nicole Schwartz, CircuitSwan, is currently a senior security product manager at Active State, researcher at the Internet of Dongs, the chief operating officer for the Diana Initiative, also another one of my favorite conferences, and one of the organizers for B-Sides Edmonton and Sky Talks. She resides in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, with her partner, 2 tuxedo cats, and a giant rabbit. So yeah, I'm excited for this talk. Questions after each segment. So we'll stop it in the middle for some questions, and then at the end if there are any. So take it away, Nicole.
Awesome. I will be talking New York City fast because I'm going to cram as much information into your heads as I can. But first, we're going to talk about securing your supply chain. Well, what is a supply chain? So if you think about a supply chain for a laptop, everybody's heard about the shortages that happened multiple years ago and are still happening. It includes the natural resources, refining those, creating components, getting all those components put together, testing them, transportation, sale at either an e-commerce platform or a retail platform, and then the consumer actually getting it, right? Well, in software, it's kind of that same end-to-end system, but a little bit different. It's going to be open source dependencies that most companies use. In fact, open source dependencies can be up to 70% or more of people's code. And that goes into a build process along with the first party code. That build process is in like a CI/CD, program that gets packaged up. It gets put on some servers, and then those servers are maybe SaaS accessible, or you get it bundled up and you download that exe and you run it on your local system. So the same kind of idea, soup to nuts, to get to a consumer. Well, a lot of us are in information security here or interested in it. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that step where we're taking components and putting it in with first party code. Now, if you've heard the phrase turtles all the way down, that's definitely the case. A lot of these open source dependencies we're talking about use open source dependencies themselves. And a lot of people who are using dependencies, they may be a combination of open source and commercial off the shelf or COTS. And so it's kind of this never ending expanding tree for your software supply chain. And do you really know what's all the way back there hiding in the corner? Do you know if that's vulnerable? And, that's really where this whole thing comes in, is you need to care about that stuff hiding upstream in your software supply chain, if either you're a consumer of something or you're a producer of it. And we've all seen this XKCD comic where there's, that one project that's maintained by that one person because that's their passion, but, they may not have a degree in cybersecurity, or they may not realize that they checked in something that was vulnerable until a security researcher tells them. And in a lot of cases, free things are like puppies. They're wonderful, they're free, you get them, and then you've got to take care of the feeding, the maintenance, the vet bills. If there's an emergency, you've got to handle that appropriately. So I'm sure you've heard of a supply chain attack like PyTorch, Torch, Triton, or other things. That's where a lot of these are coming front of mind. And we all know that a lot of times we don't pay attention to things until it's front of mind, right? All right, you agree with me, right? This is a problem. What are you going to do about it? You're not going to like this. It's pretty boring, but let's go through it. So you have figured out that you need to know what you have, your own software that your developers are writing, the dependencies that they're using, the systems they're deploying onto. And you need to kind of get an idea of as many of those as possible. Perfect is going to be the enemy of good. In a lot of cases, most companies don't know what they have. So knowing some of it is better than knowing none of it. This is where buying some donuts or pizza is going to come in handy. Make friends with finance, IT, everybody. Find out hey, are people secretly buying any domains anywhere? Are they spinning up some AWS accounts? What about some GCP accounts? That whole shadow IT problem, this is what you really got to start getting your hands around, because, you may have access to your main GitHub repository, but what if they're using, just some stuff that they spun up and put onto Wix or WordPress? You don't know about that, right? So again, finance is your friend, an asset management scanner is your friend, talking with IT to find out what domains people recently added. Consider it like a fox hunt. If you've ever played one of those games, do some Google dorking, do some Git repo scanning, like consider a little hunting game. All right, so you figured out I've got all of these assets. The next question is, are they being scanned? Software scanners, application security testing. There was somebody earlier talking about fast scans in depth. So if you didn't see that talk, go watch that. Ask QA, what kind of tests are they running? Ask your DevOps people, what are they running? What other kind of system scanners did general IT set up? Antivirus, container scans. Your security team, what kind of triage processes do y'all have like put into Runbook? And are there any external contracts? Do you have annual pen tests? What are they covering? Are they covering a subset of these assets? Are they covering all of the assets? Are they covering just the external assets? So just get your hands around for all of those assets you found. Is there somebody poking them with a stick occasionally? All right, great, you've got scans. Are they being aggregated? Is anyone actually reviewing them? Are they being run frequently enough? If it's only once every 12 months, I promise you they're very out of date. I would suggest aiming for 3 months. If you can go more frequent, that's wonderful. But anything beyond 3 months, you're really starting to get a little bit stale there. Even if you're not actively developing that code, security researchers keep finding more and more vulnerabilities. The whole fact that the CVE system is kind of at a standstill right now is a completely different talk topic that I've proposed to other places, but we could talk about that on LinkedIn or Twitter, wherever you want. But there's other ways to find vulnerabilities beyond just NIST. So keep looking at all that data. And also data retention policies. Are you deleting this when you don't need it anymore? That could contain some sensitive information that could be interesting to someone. So how about you just get rid of it? Keep only what you need. All right, so hopefully you found most of your assets. Hopefully most of them are being scanned. And hopefully somebody's actually looking at the scans and they're not going into the trash bin. You've achieved observability. Congratulations, I'm very excited. But likely you found some inaccurate data in there or some stuff that was out of date. It's time to go back and update that. Not exciting, totally boring. But putting links to those department policies, those triage processes, those run books, all of those things means that future you or other people on your team are going to have a much better time of it. All right, so no sticking your head in the sand. Your goal is observability. You've kind of temporarily got it. So if your reports aren't being aggregated, could you look into building or buying something to aggregate them just so that there's a ping that says, hey, a new scan came in, new result came in. A lot of places will sell this for you, but if you've got some like coders on your team and a lot of the tools have APIs, you can also just pull in something. It doesn't need to be fancy unless you're showing it to upper management, in which case add some pretty pie charts and whatever. But the important thing is, what have you got? When was the latest scan? Did somebody do something with it? And also verify the owners. Again, on that 3-month cadence, you'd be surprised at the number of times that a project owner leaves the company or goes on maternity leave. Who's going to be responsible if something happens there? And as far as also, we're talking about projects here. If you have the ability to talk to finance, when people are applying to do a new project, make sure that they're building in 10 to 20% budget for future years for maintenance and decommissioning, and that they put a future decommissioning date in there. And that they also put in what team owns that and gets that budget going forward. You can't just deploy a website into the wild and then abandon it. Make sure that finance is clear on that so that all the budgets going in get that allotment so that some team at least is getting a little bit of budget and resources to maintain these things. All right, so you found way more than you can ever handle, I promise. I don't care where you are, you found more stuff than you can deal with. So let's make sure you're doing it in the best priority order that you can. And it shouldn't be just on you. You should be able to spread this out with the dev teams, the ops teams, the QA teams. But I suggest you start by doing a threat model. Now, to be able to compare across all of these different things, you're going to want to use one particular threat model for everything for the comparative. But if each team wants to use a different threat model for their own purposes, because each one has its different pros and cons, that's okay. You just need one standard for comparison, whether you're using Dread, Pasta, Stride, VAST. I know, so many acronyms. I suggest checking out the threat modeling manifesto. And when I share my slides out, there's going to be some links to a couple other sites that kind of link to a bunch of different pros and cons of different platforms and why you might want to use one or the other. But all right, you've threat modeled your system. So you know which systems are kind of the most squishy, or there's the most sensitive data, or if this system is breached, it could wreak a lot of havoc because it's got a lot more admin permissions or it's got a lot more control points than the other systems. So take those highest priority ones and deal with their highest priority findings first, and then keep working your way down. And hopefully, when you're knocking off some of those higher priority things, a lot of times, because of these whole dependency trees we were talking about, the turtles all the way down, when you fix one thing, a lot of times it may actually fix a bunch of other things as well. So hopefully you're knocking out, a bunch of things every time you take off a top level item. All right, you're gonna have to repeat this cycle, which gets easier if you add automation. Example, can you alert if new IPs in your IP space go into use, like using Nmap or Shodan? Could you be doing this more than once a year? Yes, because if it's once a year, it's not going to be accurate. Could you add this automation in so that it's happening quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily? Can you schedule spot checks and divide them between the teams to make sure that the automation's actually catching things? AI. I don't think that AI is automagical. I don't think that it's going to fix everyone's problems, but it can do simple tasks. And I bet it could help you with some of your simple automation things that you want to get accomplished. So make this a little bit easier. You found all the flaws the first time around. Maybe have something where you automatically schedule all of the owners an email once a year to be like, by the way, are you still at the company? Is this still your project? When is it going to be decommissioned? See how many of those bounce. That would be a really good quick check, right? All right, you came, you observed, you made it better. Good job. And if you do need some help with that open source turtles all the way down, the place that I work builds your open source dependencies from source, so you're not just pulling it off PyPy. With isolated and ephemeral environments, does SOSA level 3, we give you some SBOMs, and we give you organizational level vulnerability reports in an API, so you can throw it in your own dashboard. Coming soon, we've also got this currency reporting and version freedom, which is basically get you current and keep you current if you're on Python with automatic code remediation. And so consider us for your portable developer runtimes for Python, Perl, and Ruby. But now let's have questions, if anybody has questions about this kind of thing.
Yeah, so we just got one question. If you have mission critical tasks that you need to spin up quickly on a server, but you can't get them officially provisioned, what process would you do for securely homebrewing this and then migrating it to IT supported infrastructure?
Okay. So I'm against shadow IT whenever possible, but sometimes people create so much red tape, you're kind of in that position. There's actually a bunch of really interesting free tools out there. So if you're talking about deploying some software that you wrote, so go grab like StemGrep or some of the other free like SAST scanners and SCA scanners and run them. If you can go ahead and run like a port scan to see what ports are open, are only the intended ports open, like come up with a very good checklist that is similar to what it would be if you deployed it in the approved IT environment. Make sure that you are filling in all the information as if it was an approved project. So give yourself all that same headache. Who's the owner? What ports are supposed to be open? Are only those ports open? Did I do a SAS scan? Did I do an SCA scan? Did I do like a web app scan? And like I said, a lot of these can be found online for free, or maybe if you have a friend, on the red team, they could like do a quick scan with some of the tools they've got. Maybe they got some Nessus or Metasploit around, or Burp Suite. Go ahead, get all of those scans in, so that this way when it's introduced into the environment, you have minimal amounts of friction. So this way you can say, well, we already did get a good Nessus scan on this, and we already did check the ports. We're willing to have it checked again, but here is all of the things we did. So really that's my recommendation, is SCA for your dependencies, container scans, antivirus if you're on like non-containerized, and just document as if you were in the regular environment. And then this way you have less friction when you're trying to sneak it into your regular environment.
All right. And we did get another question just came in. Have there ever been legal challenges in this space? For example, when an incident has occurred, like someone suing Venti or Barracuda or whatever, in the supply chain or software supply chain space?
There have not been any that I know of that actually went outside of settlement. So I think people have tried to make kerfluffle, but lawyers, I don't think any actually went to court. I think they all got settled outside of court. I know that different governments around the world are trying to implement rules where you can't just get customers to agree to waive all of their rights in terms and conditions. So I really think this space is going to be shaking up over the next few years, especially with the White House really focusing on supply chain security. They just said that they suggest people use memory safe languages. And so I would not be surprised if there weren't cybersecurity or just information security insurance changes coming, as well as regulation and law changes about who can and can't do class action lawsuits against one another.
Yep, no, that's it, just those two. So yeah, if you want to jump
All
into
right.
part two.
Part two. So you want to run an event. I'm going to provide tips about running an in-person event. This does not apply to virtual or hybrid events. Those are a completely different presentation, which I could potentially give or other people could potentially give at some point in the future. So first, why do you want to run an event? Write it down. I'm not kidding. Actually, write it down somewhere. And then you're going to have to create a business plan. This does not need to be like the perfect business plan in some kind of template that you found online or whatever. Cover, I want to do this type of activity for this type of target attendee profile. I would like to have 100, 500, 1,000 people. I want to charge them money, or I want it to be free and have the event covered by other sources. This will be the kind of activities there. Will there be food and beverage? Will there be alcohol? Any other special considerations like risk of fire? If you're running an indoor, Renaissance festival and you want to have fire breathers or fire dancers, that's a thing. So when we get into the who is this for, you've got your business plan, you got why you want to run the event. Think about your ideal customer profile. So anyone who's been in the product management space, you know this. It's because you're going to have to target these people. Are they early career people? Are they of a specific gender? Are they of a specific career type? Are they people in a certain geographical area? Figure out all of these different variables and then keep checking as you go through the process. Are you still servicing this group? Are you still meeting their needs? And is your business plan still valid? Because sometimes you'll keep making these individual little choices and you'll find yourself deviating away. So you're going to have to check back with this occasionally. And then you're not going to be able to be everything to everyone. And you're going to have to resist that urge. And sometimes you're going to have to reject things that are a great idea and would be wonderful somewhere else. Next, make a list of geographical areas. Are your ICPs welcome and safe there? For example, at TDI, we have somebody who's tracking local laws in Nevada to find out if that's going to change, that our ICPs are no longer welcome. We communicate that on our website, on our tickets, and in our newsletters, because we don't want somebody who's not going to be safe or comfortable to attend our event. And thus far, luckily, Nevada's actually been good, and we don't have to look into relocating. Pick one of those areas and then call around. Call everyone, community halls, event centers, hotels, conference centers, universities. Call everyone. And they're probably going to ask you a lot of stuff off that business plan. So this is where the business plan starts to come in handy. A lot of those venues are not going to return your call. You're either going to be too big, too small. You're going to have suggested a date that doesn't work for them. Next, they're probably going to want a large deposit to lock you in. So you may just want to do the thing of hey, we're currently discussing this with multiple people. I'll get back to you in a couple weeks, unless you happen to have a whole bunch of money sitting around and you definitely want that venue. They may require you to spend a certain amount on food and beverage. So if you've been in an event and are why the heck are they doing all this food and beverage stuff? It's because sometimes there's a requirement. There has to be a certain amount spent. They may also require you to use their facility for food and beverage and audio and visual. So you may not have the option to bring in anybody else or do it on your own, or there could be a penalty associated with that. They may require that you sell a certain amount of hotel room nights. So that's why a lot of events have hotel blocks, because they need that certain number of nights, otherwise they pay a penalty fee. They may require you to get insurance. They may require you to get different types of insurance depending how many different activities you're doing. Often they have a lot of rules what you can and can't do. You can or cannot hang things from the ceiling. If you hang things from the ceiling, they have to be this particular way, and we have to do it, so on and so forth. Also, they may be booked for the dates you want, so you may have to adjust. Sometimes the location dictates the dates, or the dates dictate the location, vice versa. All right, so you've made progress. You have when, where, how many people, hopefully, that you need to break even or that you can maximum accommodate in that space. And you have kind of the cost for, your venue. You know approximately how much you have to spend on food and bev, AV, etc. All right, now, how are you going to pay for this? Are you going to get sponsors? Are you going to get vendors? Are you going to sell tickets? Are you going to pay out of your own pocket? Are you going to get a loan? Do you have some other idea like grants? And does that proposed cost match with your original business plan? Are you getting in way over your head? Is there enough of the ICP in that area or that can easily get to that area to even make that minimum reasonable? It needs to be reasonable. Can you get enough vendors to that particular location? What about sponsors? Like, is there a really good airport or train station right there? What about other venues in the area or events in the area? Are they charging similar to you? Has there been similar events? Even if it's not, an InfoSec event, even if it's a gaming event, is there something of a similar size and a similar cost? If not, you may be like taking a really big risk here. There may be a reason why. There may not be, but there may be a reason. All right, so if you're gonna have vendors, and a vendor like could be a craft fair, or it could be like an expo hall. So a lot of different meanings for vendors. Are you gonna do an open call for vendors? What are those vendors gonna get in exchange for signing up to be a vendor? Do they get a table? Do they get a certain amount of square footage? Do they get Wi-Fi access? Do they get power access? Are those at extra fees? Why do I say that? Because a lot of times the venue itself is like, oh yeah, you can fit, 50 tables in here, but to give any of them power is an extra 25 bucks or 50 bucks a day. To give any of them Wi-Fi is an extra $100 per device per day. You'd be shocked at the prices that they charge sometimes. Are the vendors going to pay a flat fee to get that space? Or, is related to the square footage? Or are they going to give you a percentage of their sales? Or is it going to be some kind of combination of both? All right, how are you getting your content? Content could be speakers, workshops, musical acts. Are you going to do an open call? Are you going to specifically invite people? Are you offering them any kind of compensation? So sometimes certain speakers, DJs, etc., are not going to come unless they get a certain amount of money, or at least at a minimum, they get hotel, travel, food, etc., covered. If you're going to do that open call, what kind of software are you going to leverage to do that? Is that something that you had already budgeted for? Who's going to be your review committee? What dates are you going to open and close? And when you close, is that going to give everybody enough time to actually book their flights and their hotels and everything to attend? All right, so if you want to have sponsors for your event, how are you going to find them? Do you have any salespeople that are going to help you do cold calls? Do you have a sponsor kit made up that's very clear about what perks and benefits they get for their sponsorship? People usually are not just going to throw money at you. They're going to want some kind of, we get our name recognized, and people can see it, or it's on their bag, or it's on their shirt, or it's on the badge. Like, they want something in exchange. All right, for the attendees, how are they going to find you? Do you have a website? Do you have social media? Are you going to do free ad type things where you find like local groups that say activities coming up this weekend or next week or this month? Or are you going to do paid ads? How are they going to know what events are going on? How are you going to do the schedule? Are you just going to put it on your website? Are you going to use some kind of tool like Sketch? What if they want to do it on their mobile device? Is your website mobile friendly, or are you going to do some kind of app? Are you going to let them save their schedule because you have a really complex schedule and they want to be able to save it? If any of you have been to like DragonCon or anything, there's so many things going on. You definitely need to be able to like pick and choose and save things. Is it going to be free attendance to the event, paid attendance to the event? Are individual activities going to have additional fees, kind of like a gaming event? And if those additional activities have fees, how are you going to arrange for collecting that? And are you going to allow people to drop them and get refunds up to how far in advance? Are you going to give them anything like a swag bag? Is the swag bag going to be limited to the first number of people, or is it going to be limited to a certain ticket type, like a premium one? If you need to monitor access within an area, how are you going to know that they paid? Are they going to have a badge, or do you don't really need to worry about that because once they get into the building, everybody in the building is yours? All right, what about safety incidents? What if there's a fire? What if there's harassment? What if there's some kind of medical issue? How are you going to deal with that? Are you going to have volunteers who can defer to venue safety staff? Is there even venue safety staff? Are they in some way trained? Do you have a policy on acceptable behavior, like a code of conduct? How are you going to deal with other things like preventing illness? We are in the age of COVID. Do you have air filtration? Are you going to require masks? These are all things for you to consider. All right, staffing. Events require work ahead of time, not just the day of. How many staff do you need in advance? And where are you going to get them? Are you going to pay them? During the event itself, how are you going to staff the event? Are they going to be paid or unpaid? If they're volunteers, what kind of perks do they get? Most people are not just going to volunteer for, no payment. I mean, yes, there's plenty of us crazy people who will do that, but occasionally they want like free access and only have to work half the events. They can attend the other half of the event, things like that. How many of those people are you going to need? And also factor in flake rate. You may have 100 people say they're going to show up and you only get 70. So take that into account. Also, people need rest, food, bio breaks. Take that into account, making sure you have shifts and rotation. All right, when can you actually set up? Don't assume you can do it the day before unless you actually pay for the square footage the day before. The venue may only give it to you the morning of. Also, when do you need to be out by? Don't assume you can do it the next morning. You may need to be out within hours of your closing time. Are you allowed to do it yourself, or do you need to use the hotel's employees or approved contractor? All right, now that you went through all of that, all those additional things that you found, does that original budget mesh with the original idea? Do you still have enough ICP in the area that can get to the area? Do you have enough vendors, enough sponsors, enough content? Is there other similar sized events in this area? Is your business plan still valid? Is your why and for who still clear? Are you still making them happy, or did you try to make everybody happy? So just, checking in on that. There is so much more that I could cover here, but I can't do it all in 15 minutes. So hopefully I gave you some kind of an idea about things to cover. I'm going to give you a couple examples next, and then you can ask questions. Things that kind of I found out, surprisingly, in Nevada, if anyone at my event is selling something, I need to collect the taxes and remit them, not the individual vendors. I need to get event insurance, and I need to get different event insurance if I'm doing alcohol or not alcohol, just things like that. All right, let's talk about a holiday craft fair. I actually did this one. This was back in my Rackspace days. So we had our own building, and there were lots of other companies in those buildings / the building campus. So we invited everyone in the building and their family and friends. The fire capacity for the room that we got was 100, so we cut it to 50 because we were going to be cramming in all sorts of vendor tables. We made it free for the vendors and for the attendees because we got the space for free. So it was the building lunchroom. We picked a date and a time. We informed building security. They helped us advertise to everybody in the building. We put up little flyers and things. We also advertised to the local business groups and crafting groups. That was free. That was like Reddit, reaching out to the local business association. I was in the local business association, so handed out flyers at a meeting. We set up a little free website. We made some posts to social media, like on our own social media with flyers. And the office manager and myself were the only staff. And basically, we just let everybody in to go shopping for the holidays and then brought them out. And we didn't run into a capacity issue because people were just kind of coming in and out. So we never quite hit where we were too crowded. And so that we didn't have to have the insurance. This one was relatively simple to set up. Like I said, it was just the two of us. And I think everybody had fun. We ended up doing it, I think, 2, if not 3 years. All right, information security event. targeted to students and professionals, which is kind of a little bit wide, which means you need to expand the content that you're going to offer to have some beginner stuff and some more advanced stuff. Targeting 500 paid tickets due to fire code, so it can't exceed that. Due to the number of people that generally no show, we could sell a bit over 500, but actual check-ins 500 at a local college event center that does have a food and beverage commitment. They do have the AV that they provide, and we have to pay them for. We worked out a date and time with them that they didn't have any other campus activities or prior commitments. Purchased 2-day insurance. Solicited sponsors, made a sponsor kit, shopped it around, relied on a lot of the volunteers to kind of shop it around, reached out to people who had sponsored it in the past, any companies in the area that might even have information people or IT people. Made a website, made sure to put the speakers and the schedule and the activities up on there. Have social media set up, bought stickers. Everybody loves stickers. Got badges and lanyards. T-shirts for everybody because it's only 500 people, and then we could tell all the sponsors that their names are going onto a T-shirt. It was staffed by volunteers before the event, and it is staffed by more volunteers on the day of. So think like a team of 10 or so year round, and then 30 to 40 or so on each day of the event. We also have campus security around for anything major, any escalations we need. The college does the basic AV, and the volunteers do kind of the specialized stuff like the capture the flag or handling registration. Open call for speakers, open call for workshops, capture the flag competition, which we had to find prizes for, and a lot of signs. I don't care how many signs you buy, everyone's going to say they can't find everything, so just buy more signs than you think that you reasonably need. And so the TLDR is, who are you running this for? How many can you have it there? Like how many minimum, maximum, free or paid, where, when, negotiating with venues, figuring out your food and alcohol, what's going to happen at the event, that schedule. Tip for scheduling, always give 5 to 10 minutes in between for people to physically traverse between locations. Otherwise, you're going to have everybody showing up late or leaving early and it gets chaotic. Making sure you have the right kind of insurance, making sure that people can find out about your event to buy those tickets or grab the free tickets or just to show up. Sponsors has been super hard this year for anybody who's in the space. I feel you. But doing that whole cold calling thing, which none of us like anyway, for those of you in sales, I salute you. It is very difficult. Staffing your event, security, setup, tear down. I have a Google Doc actually called Running an Event, where I try and put all sorts of notes that I will share with anybody interested in running an event. So if you are an event organizer who wants to help contribute, or somebody interested in running an event who wants access, just let me know. And so if you still want to run an event after all of that nonsense, welcome to the madness. I suggest volunteering as staff at a different event first to give it out a try in person, not just in theory, not just day of volunteering. Diana Initiative is looking for more staffers. Besides Edmonton is looking for more staffers. Work on your business plan. You can get a bunch of that set up. You can grab your domains and everything in advance, just so that you've got it and you're ready, and take your time to get feedback from potential attendees. If you were paying $100 or if you were paying $50 and lunch wasn't included, how would you feel about that, etc. And then attend other events. Make notes on what you think went really well that you definitely want to do. What could be improved on that you could do better. Get feedback from other attendees of that same event. Kind of like wedding planning for anyone who's done that. There's a lot of things that you think are important, like the flowers, that nobody remembers the next day, except for maybe the bride and groom. So those kind of things, although nice, maybe don't need to be on the absolutely mandatory list. So with that, if you want to find me anywhere on the internet, I'm easy to find, but I will take questions for anybody who's interested in running an event.
Okay, so there were 2 questions. The first one we answered already, which was, what does ICP stand for? We worked
Ideal
it out.
customer profile, yep.
Okay, well, we got to Insane Clown Posse, but yeah, pretty much the same idea, I guess. It depends
Oh,
on what
that
conference.
could be your target, could be Juggalos.
It could be, yeah. And then the other question I got was from Deviant, which sounds more like a statement than a question, but it said, do you think we are reasonable, those of us who get frustrated when an event's website does not have the dates and location prominently featured in the upper corner of their website on every page?
So having worked with Wix and WordPress and a bunch of other things,
Mhm.
you are probably being slightly unreasonable. Sometimes you cannot physically put it there. I would love all events to make sure somewhere in the top that you put the dates. I actually, when I joined B-Sides Edmonton, the first feedback I had, which ended up getting me in charge of the website, so don't open your mouth unless you want to become suddenly in charge of things, was why is the dates for the event not on the main page? So suddenly I got editing access and I am now in charge of the B-Sides Edmonton website. So yes, I agree that the dates, location, times should be very, very clear. Sometimes you can't get it in the header though, and I blame CMS editors for that.
Okay, and I've got one more question. What happens if you slightly oversell your venue event, and then when you get too many people arriving, would you give a refund or what would you do in that case?
So it depends if they all show up. At
Mhm.
both B-Sides Edmonton and Diana Initiative, we have definitely sold more tickets than we have. But because people show up for a short period of time and not the entire time, we have not run into that issue there. Now, if you roll back on Diana Initiative, probably like 3 or 4 years ago when we were in a suite in the hotel and not a full-on conference center, we ended up turning people away. Most people were fine with not doing a refund because as a nonprofit, they were happy to kind of like soak that cost as a donation. But I definitely would, if I were turning people away such that I knew they wouldn't be able to come back like in an hour or two, like if we didn't have a lot of in-out happening, I'd definitely offer a refund and immediately just use whatever system that I was using to like process that refund right there, no questions. But you'd be surprised at the number of people who like want to show up for one or two particular things, um, or maybe can only show up in the afternoons or the mornings, at least if you're a local event. Like if
Mhm.
they have a day job that maybe they need to do some meetings in the morning or meetings in the afternoon. Now, on the other hand, if you're a destination event and people are flying in, you will get a higher show rate to no show rate. So it really depends on your situation, but I definitely would plan to issue refunds if you oversell, although some people may not ask for them. And then on the other hand, some people will ask for refunds when they got a $0 ticket, which you can happily issue them that refund and it's no problem.
And then let me just see. Okay, so yeah, this is the good question. Coming from Shannon, is there a centralized place where you can get hold of your event checklist?
Not necessarily an event checklist, but let's see. Right here is literally something called running an event or a conference, where I have an entire Google Drive of resources for conferences, video editing software that I've reviewed, tips to give to speakers, help running speaker operations, social media, tonality, an ops binder for your ops team, ideas if you are going to have alcohol at your event on making sure that you've got mocktails and virgin cocktails available. And this is linked on my different social medias. I will link it again after this event on my different social medias. And this is, anyone who wants to contribute to this, please do. I'm trying to make like a generalized resource for as many conference organizers as want to kind of, learn cool things, and like here's some badge sales tips and everything.
So yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome, thanks.